Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on sustainable lighting. I'll just give it a few minutes just to see if we've got any late joiners joining us before I hand over to John to start the presentation. So please bear with us. Okay, I think we're all here. So John, I'll pass over to you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be with us for this webinar today, which we hope you find useful. It addresses the drive towards and the need for LED lighting in retail. It follows a simple structure in three parts, looking first at the environmental and operational influences, both internal and external, impacting on your decisions to invest in your estate. The central part is a practical case study for Sainsbury's and Argos, showing their process from initial board commitments through the establishment of targets and budgets, and then how priorities were established to deliver them, including the multi-store rollout of LED lighting by Fi. We will show the advantages, both commercial and environmental, of their programme, before finally peeping into the future of lighting and how it might be applied in retail. You'll hear from three of us today. My name is John Dale. I've held senior positions with large manufacturers and before leaving to establish Fi Lighting in 2003. I'll run the case study section. But first you'll hear from Len Fincham, who's our sales manager. He's been in lighting 21 years in senior technical and commercial roles, and at Fi Lighting for 16 of them. Len will lead the influences section. Lastly, and peering into his crystal ball, the future section will be led by Stuart Dancy, our technical director, who is a product and lighting designer by trade, with 20 years in lighting, 17 of them with Fi. So, intro's done. Without further delay, I'll pass you over to Len.
Thanks, John. Quickly, and apologies, folks. I'm full of cold today. Rather most unfortunate days to have woke up with a cold. So please bear with me. I'll try to keep coughing and spluttering to a minimum. But first of all, in this section, I will aim to cover a number of environmental and operational factors that should be considered before starting a new retail lighting installation in the UK. With retail being a hugely diverse sector in the lighting market, making the right decision on what type of lighting installation is correct is massively important. Understanding the varied and sometimes complex factors involved can help shape these thoughts. Although the quality of light is often only perceived subconsciously, it influences well-being and perception, and thus also purchasing outcomes. Light is therefore increasingly becoming an important part of the shopping experience. A modern and future-proof lighting solution is a real and important building block for merchandising. One of the biggest external influences is government policy. The UK government has enshrined in law new targets to slash emissions by 78% by 2035 to try to achieve net zero by 2050. The drive to meet those targets means tighter measurement of emissions and the reporting requirements of businesses. The UK's nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, already has one of the most ambitious 2030 targets for reducing emissions in the world. Designers need to be incentivised not just to specify low carbon materials, but to design holistically with them towards an overall low carbon solution. One of the most recent high-profile environmental events was last year's COP26 in Glasgow. After this meeting, the Glasgow Climate Pact requested that all the countries, including the UK, revisit and strengthen the 2030 targets in their NDCs. One of the most memorable quotes from the conference was made by Prince Charles, and don't worry, I won't be doing the accent, when he summed up all the mood when he declared, quite literally, "This is the last chance saloon. We must now translate fine words into still finer actions." Energy prices. They're a real concern for everyone at present, even those companies who are large enough or fortunate enough to forward buy their energy are now beginning to see large increases in their costs. Wholesale market volatility amongst other factors, including the war in Ukraine, has seen energy pricing jump by record levels for all consumers, with the building research establishment finding that 43% of electricity used in retail is for lighting. These increases show how important energy efficient lighting is to the retail sector. According to a recent CBI report, many energy prices for medium-sized users are set to grow by a further 15% in the next 5 years. The need to make change is evident, but making the right changes can have huge impacts. A Carbon Trust advised, a 20% cut in energy usage can represent the same bottom line benefit as a 5% increase in sales. Another key influence is customer expectations. We've all got good customers and we all like to keep them. Customers have always sought to align their purchasing preferences with companies who feel they have similar ethics to themselves. A Deloitte report recently discovered that 1 in 3 consumers claim to have stopped purchasing certain brands or products because they had an ethical or sustainability concern about them. This is particularly true of a younger demographic, with another report from the European banking group, Troidus, finding that 49% of under 24s avoided a business because of the brand's negative environmental impact. There's good news, however. A recent report by the Shop Global Network found that while shoppers are upping their sustainability expectations, they also want brands and retailers to publicise these good works, with 66% saying they felt there should be greater emphasis in the areas. Being at the forefront of this change is becoming expected of all businesses, but making consumers aware of this is also a great marketing opportunity for your business. We've dealt with a number of external influences already. Now we turn to look at the internal influences in UK retail. The first to consider is employee expectations. We all know that employee expectations should have an influence on those making decisions which affect them. A period of consultation and engagement is often a great way to achieve understanding and acceptance in any workplace changes. A recent report by Oxford Economics found that on average, the cost of replacing a single member of staff can be up to £30,000. A statistic that, I'll be honest, I was very surprised about, but maybe Oxford Economics know much more about it than I do. So providing a workplace where these workers feel they want to work is vitally important. Lighting can have a huge impact on the well-being of staff. A recent study by Lighting Europe found that a quality lighting system can increase staff productivity by 4.5%, reduce accidents by 1%, and reduce absenteeism by the same figure, and also reduce errors by up to 2%. All great reasons to consider installing a well thought out and balanced lighting design. Cost reduction is a concern for all businesses. Conservative estimates suggest that a 10 to 15-year-old lighting system consumes 5 times as much energy as a new one. Even for sites which installed first generation LED lights, possibly 8 or even 10 years ago, can now benefit from increased savings by installing the latest LED systems. Occupancy and daylight dimming sensors are among the most effective lighting controls, reducing or increasing illumination based on need. An automated system even, can never forget to turn the lights off, unlike a lot of us. Being able to control luminaires remotely via the latest lighting management software allows monitoring and control of the lighting from anywhere and at any time. It can view, compare and control multiple areas in single or multiple sites at the press of a button. This remote visibility also allows maintenance issues to take place quickly and effectively. No longer are engineers attending breakdowns with little or no information. They can attend with the correct components to replace or repair a faulty unit, as they know exactly what the fitting is and exactly where it's located. The use of daylight to complement lighting design is rapidly growing in popularity in the retail environment. When integrated with an energy efficient lighting design controls, daylight can make a huge saving in electrical consumption. The final internal influence we're to look at is corporate social responsibility, or CSR for short. This internal organisational policy helps businesses commit to local, national or international causes such as donations to charity or supporting ethical trading practices. A great example of CSR in action is Coca-Cola. In the United States, when asking nearly 80,000 employees how they wanted to improve their CSR, these employees voted to give use a percentage of the savings raised by the new energy efficient measures, of which lighting was a major part, to increase the charity donations of the corporation. In total, several $1 million was added to the CSR charity fund annually, a massive win for lighting. A report by the British Retail Consortium also indicates that improvements in lighting retail can have a large potential to reduce energy consumption by more than 2,800 gigawatt hours annually. That's about 10% of retail's total total electricity demand. The last statistic alone shows what a huge impact can be had by insisting on quality, design-led installations in the retail environment. In this next section, I'll aim to highlight a number of different barriers that in our experience are best overcome to ensure a successful lighting retail project. We will look at 4 different areas, including creating a business case, finance and funding, installation considerations, and finally, end of cycle coordination and planning. The first area we'll look at is creating a business case. The first barrier is often on any project is cost. Creating a strong business case which stands up to scrutiny is vital. As with most expenditure, calculating the return on investment or ROI that a project gives is an essential part of formulating a business case. But an ROI calculation also assists when reviewing finished projects and planning new ones. Using a payback calculator is often the simplest way of showing easily understandable figures that can be used for comparison and communication purposes within a business. If big impacts are needed quickly for if you're looking for big impacts, quite easily the best place to look is the lowest hanging fruit. The stores or areas with the least efficient lighting in the portfolio is quite often the best place to start. Payback calculators can be very involved documents with hundreds of different metrics and calculations being used to get to an end result. However, no matter what type is used, a strong business case needs to have both financial and technical, as well as operational elements to ensure colleagues have all the information they need to make decisions both on existing and up and coming projects. The next area we'll look at is still related to finance, but this slide will deal with how you can possibly fund your project. When considering the financing and funding needed to implement a new lighting installation, there are numerous avenues open to you. As with most things in life, it's always probably best to start with impartial advice. There are a number of governmental bodies you can turn to. The Department of Trade and Industry, Ofgem or Regional Development Agency, or even the local Chamber of Commerce are great places to start. Another source of funding is the Annual Investment Allowance, or IAI, not very easy to say, which is a form of tax relief for British businesses. This allowance is earmarked for the purchase of business equipment. Lighting falls into the internal features element, and the amount offered was previously limited only to £200,000. But in January 2019, this was increased to £1 million. Also to be considered are capital grants, which can assist with funding as a contribution towards energy efficiency measures. And while the above is not in any way all the options available, hopefully it demonstrates that help is out there and can assist your business. Another area which is paramount to success of any project is the close integration of the team working on it, basically choosing the right partners. From the time a lighting project starts, it's vital to work in close cooperation with a team of design and supply partners who offer experience in your given sector and can offer a full project management, an understanding of the latest trends in the industry. Quite often during projects, changes are required, whether small or large, to ensure that successful completion. Having a responsive project team allows it to take place as seamlessly as possible. Also, during the appointment of installation partners, considerations should include the following areas. Possibly industrial sector experience. Are they being fully versed in the latest regulations and technology and the developments in the industry? Are they big enough to cope? But are they also small enough and agile enough to react to issues that need dealing with? Do they have the ability to cover multiple installations, often at the same time, and possibly also in different geographical locations? We feel if the above criteria are met, it goes a long way to ensure the best possible fit with your project. On-site integration is another key ingredient to a successful project. This means ensuring client representatives, contractors, suppliers, and store staff are all aware of key practices and timeframes to ensure project critical deadlines are met. This can often mean phased working, often working outside of normal working hours to ensure that any potentially disruptive operations can be undertaken at times which will not affect the smooth operation of the retail spaces. Part of this program management is a need to manage the storage of equipment on site during installation work, a very real concern for most retailers who are often short on available free space. Using containers in staff car parks is often the easiest option. However, developing innovative solutions to get around these issues allows contractors to be efficient both in time and costs. Good examples of this include just-in-time deliveries from suppliers, phased deliveries, ensuring that excess equipment doesn't need to be stored on site till the next phase, although single point delivery is the least carbon impactful. Possibly using a larger central location to pull materials, allowing distribution from a central point for a variety of smaller local stores. This final slide would deal with making the end of cycle coordination and planning an essential part of the project inception. This means that everyone is engaged and understands the importance of this, pushing all parties to have positive solutions to minimise waste and decrease the impact of new installations. The need to dispose of any waste electrical and electronic equipment, or WEEE as it's commonly known, is nothing new. Dealing with the many different substances of which contains hazardous components and valuable materials. The recovery of these plays a key role in environmental sustainability because it measures the negative effects of hazardous materials and returns resources back into the supply chain. This is a major part of the circular economy, on which my colleague Stuart will speak more on later. I'll now hand over to John, who can run you through our case study on the recent work undertaken on the Sainsbury's estate. Thank you.
Hi everybody, John Dale here again. In this next section, I'm going to take around 15 to 20 minutes seeking to give you an overview of how one of the largest supermarket chains, Sainsbury's, approached their challenges. I hope it provides some thought triggers for you and inspiration of what can be achieved on what can be achieved. On the journey, we will look at their process and some of the key aspects of their successful carbon reduction program, as well as how they viewed and implemented change. I've paraphrased and compressed their process here to help explain what might look like a complicated undertaking, but needn't be, with a clear strategy and effective partners. So their simple 4-step path began with: assess and prioritise the existing nature and tech contained in the current estate, so that they could then set some clear targets and ambition for the quickest and most meaningful returns. Then identify a budget, select and engage effective partners, and establish a programme of work, so they could measure the change and see the rewards and outcomes to enable the process to recommence. You know, irrespective of the size of the organisation, the process and challenges remain pretty constant for all, need not really be viewed as daunting. So to the first step. As part of the assessment, any business must decide on their desired outcomes to save energy, to save money, or to cut carbon and emphasise one of them. Happily, these are all interlinked, and so action on one is action on them all, a kind of virtuous circle, if you will. But the Sainsbury's, as we will see, carbon was the bullseye. Once they understood their energy profile, it was clear that the estate offered not just one, but several opportunities for savings. Lighting became key on the list, since over previous years, the estate still featured a high percentage of fluorescent fixtures, either relatively new T5 lamp technology or much older T8 lamps. Market testing performance of LED and incorporating lighting design ideas by FI and other suppliers into the spec led to the issue of a technical document for the purposes of tendering, called What Good Looks Like. It benchmarked performance criteria such as luminous efficacy, light levels, of course, and how and where the lighting strategy would locate fixtures. From the tender, a pricing framework is established for the supply of lighting, refrigeration, heating, and other potential services, enabling simple calculations to determine the payback periods for comparison. Paybacks for the lighting for some stores was less than 2 years, so these were prioritised, and some were longer, and these were programmed too, but for later. It was at this stage FI Lighting tendered and won the opportunity to refurbish around 400 stores to date and counting. Sainsbury's Stores Limited began their process, as most do, with technical surveys to understand current activity and to see where the largest expenditures lie and determine the relative consumption of refrigeration, heating, ventilation, or inefficient lighting. Sometimes this level of detail is not necessary, since it's quite straightforward to closely estimate the consumption of a lighting fixture based on the lamp and circuitry technology it incorporates, which will save time and cost in the process. Once garnered, such information is potentially sensitive for each business, so the chart shown is generic. That said, lighting invariably consumes reasonably up to and around 40% of any non-LED adopted retailer's electricity bill, so often represents an easy target for savings and short payback periods. Of course, each organisation has its own structure and resource limits of finance and personnel, meaning a review might include the employment of trained analysts and sustainability specialists, in-house or external consultants. However, if resources do not permit, there is plenty of free help available from energy providers such as E.ON, but it's critical that any operation understands where energy costs are expended and to then deduce where the lowest fruit can be found for prioritisation. There are several versions of payback calculators available, and in our experience, some are so simple to be meaningless, and others so complicated they render themselves somewhat unfathomable. The one developed with Sainsbury's is, again, a sensitive document, and these are just 2 extracts. It factors in operating hours, daylight savings, variable electricity costs, and shows all the new fittings and their consumption. The store consumptions were measured, and via several tabs on the workbook, it identifies store refurbishment costs and savings to be expected, and is suited to an individual site or for an entire estate. This store shows a reduction from nearly 60,000 kilowatt hours down to something under 7. You can also see the specific saving. The calculated outputs included payback period, existing load, proposed load, and carbon reduction for the store. Taking a composite across their entire estate, including Argos, they were able to move to the next stage of their process to set targets and create an ambition. From the payback and benefit comparisons, in significant part facilitated by a change to LED lighting, Sainsbury's made this commitment to install LED lighting throughout their estate, but found that a more ambitious programme would support a reduction of their 2040 ambition by 5 years to 2035. They did this, and 2035 is where it stands currently. The result would be to reduce lighting energy consumption by 70% and overall store energy consumption by 20%. This followed an extensive financial investment of 320 million over the past 10 years, funding more than 3,100 sustainable initiatives, some of which worked from the outset, some are coming on stream, and inevitably some failed to make the cut. It's an obvious common denominator to us that the successful programmes with which I have been involved are board driven. Besides the 1.5 Celsius commitment, Sainsbury's went further and became signatories of other external commitments, including Race to Zero and the business ambition for 1.5 degrees Celsius, further demonstrating their goal of driving towards net zero emissions by 2040, but now, as we have seen, 2035. Patrick is the property director, and this image is taken from a presentation in which he gives clear, unambiguous targets, and it acts as a window into their ambition. It's typical of the kind of commitment required to succeed. It's quite an impressive clip, and if you drop us a line, we'll be happy to forward it on to you. Investing around 10% of their annual capital expenditure into energy targets means that they are absolutely bound to the wider business as part of the business plan. So the scope and ambition to deliver against them requires a vision about how the wider business will benefit. Sainsbury's believed demonstrating the power of these commitments to a younger demographic making purchasing decisions would show they are attuned to their concerns and is additionally an evident commitment to the well-being of their own colleagues whom they wish to retain. I've underlined it here, but Sainsbury's clearly see energy and carbon as a key battleground towards a competitive advantage too. Clear ambitions set against measurable objectives were made by Sainsbury's. As an aside, the 1.5 Celsius is the highest ambition of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. And if they meet the pledge, Sainsbury's will do so a full decade ahead of the UK's own climate timetable. It seems a powerful message to place in the public domain as they seek an edge over competitors. By aligning to the Independent Carbon Trust Authority, the aim to deliver their target would be met from using, for example, more renewable energy in their stores and operations, making fridges more energy efficient, using F1 designed innovative foil deflection technology, and upgrading lighting to LED. Sainsbury's have an efficient and competent in-house engineering team to facilitate much of the direction they wish to take, but the Carbon Trust website and officers offer a wealth of online and personal tailored guidance and support to all businesses, and is definitely a good place to look as any client sets forth. The groundwork and priorities were set, and Sainsbury's moved onto the phase where it all came to life. £1 billion was committed, and as we have heard, a significant chunk of that has already been invested on climate and sustainability related initiatives, such that in the last 15 years they have reduced their emissions by more than a third, even though the business is nearly half as large again as it was. To fully set the commitment, the board were incentivised to deliver year on year against the target, with annual delivery targets to be met, including spending a targeted amount each year, one with which we were quite pleased to help. So it was time to lay the foundation of action now, and on we went with Sainsbury's, who tendered their installation work, so that a small group of highly specialised and very experienced retail installation contractors were selected, and to whom a selection of stores were allocated. A programme was set, and this is a short extract. Reading across the top, it runs more or less in project order from detailed survey, undertaken in great detail by the contract installation teams, following which drawings and specific requirements are generated, enabling FI to effect designs. Subsequent design review meetings took place, and with the client for feedback and amendment and agreement of on-site and off-site dates. These resulted also in a bill of materials for each site, which enabled site-specific payback calculators in which the client could see cost of materials and installation, energy savings, electricity, cost reduction, carbon reduction, and an estimate of the payback period for each. Waste is part of the environment management of refurbishment, and as founder signatories of we, in conjunction with our partner, this was undertaken cleanly, efficiently and consciously from each site by FI, supported by the contract teams, and all was well. Energy saving was important, but so too is lighting in retail, for other obvious reasons. So our experienced and qualified design professionals engaged at this time and undertook the design of all areas to ensure compliance with all the relevant standards and ensure that the finished effect was not only super efficient, but also gave a pleasing appearance, incorporating the right product in the right place, doing what it's meant to. Undertaking designs also gave us a very early but still quite accurate view of the requirements. And with mutual trust assured over 5 years working with Sainsbury's, FI were able to pre-order components and other long lead time equipment prior to the official settled requirement being notified to us. In this way, we got ahead of the curve with significant stock levels available for call-off by the contractors at less than a week's notice. However, largely due to careful project management by them, this was rarely required, but a significant advantage of stock holding was the ability to meet critical store completions on time by being able to call off replacements for damaged or lost fittings with just a day or two's notice from stock. This was also beneficial to the project and to the installers who were then able to submit their invoices without delay. The close working relationship we built with the installation teams has resulted in advocacy. As we have received additional significant inquiries from several of them and their other clients. Once the programme of work had been going for some time and excuse me, and having invested this amount of time and money, clients want to report some results and vindicate the effort. After all, you can't manage what you don't measure. Monitoring the results ongoing is undertaken in a variety of ways, and some can be seen here. Greenhouse emissions measures against their 1.5 Celsius target, spending what they set out to invest, gaining competitive advantages as the only consistently A-rated food supplier, and most importantly, the last one, making sure they keep FI busy. And with nearly 150,000 luminaires and counting delivered to date, we've certainly been that. By accelerating their programme, Sainsbury's have massively impacted their carbon footprint in real terms. From 949,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide in 2018-19 to 422,000 tonnes carbon dioxide in 2021-22, or by 56%. It was their stated aim, so whilst not all stores are LED by the end of 2021, as they had intended, they will be by the end of their financial year in March 2023. The programme for 2023 onwards will be announced towards the end of this year, but there are several new aspects of the estate they intend to address and with which we hope to be involved. So, what sums up their success most succinctly for me is this statement. It's not possible to share their total electrical consumption across the estate or for lighting specifically, nor indeed to share what pound note sterling they have saved, but this statement suggests it's significant, very significant. That concludes our profile of our lighting with Sainsbury's. So I'm now passing you over to my colleague, Stuart Dancy, who will take us through the final part of our presentation and offer a crystal ball into the trends shaping the future of lighting and retail projects in particular.
John, thank you for your introduction. Good afternoon and welcome. Thankfully, I can confirm that no crystal balls will be required for this section of the webinar, as the industry has already been making advances towards sustainable lighting. Adoption is now just moving at a faster pace following the COVID-19 pandemic. The key areas I will touch on today are LED upgrades, controls and smart devices, modularity and interoperability, and CIBSE TM66, moving from a linear to circular economy. John has just covered the successful Sainsbury's estate-wide LED upgrade programme. However, there are still many retailers yet to undertake a complete estate upgrade from traditional metal halide and fluorescent lamp sources to LED. Pioneering adopters of LED fittings will have already seen the payback from their initial investment. However, the high efficacy performance seen with current generation LED fittings will offer further savings over the early LED fittings previously installed. This will become a priority strategy, especially given the current volatility in energy markets, as already touched on by Lem. The upgrade to LED fittings also provides an opportunity to introduce or upgrade a control system. Controls, whilst not new within retail or the industry in general, are becoming easier to implement and install. Traditional wired solutions are no longer the only option. Wireless Bluetooth mesh network systems allow communication and control between fittings without the need to change all existing wiring. Application-based control systems allow both the initial commissioning or end-user operation and override to be intuitive and simple. Scenes can be set to create ambience or high contrast environments to draw customers' attention to where you want it. Daylight link controls can monitor ambient light levels and only supplement natural lighting as and when required, reducing electrical loads further and maximizing savings. Smart devices. Put simply, IoT devices connect to the internet in addition to any local control system. With the integration of IoT technologies, greater functionality and wider connectivity can be achieved, allowing fittings to communicate both locally or remotely. This can be taken a step further by introducing tunable white lighting to replicate the natural circadian rhythm, delivering positive effects for both the conscious and subconscious mind, influencing mood, behavior, and general well-being of in-store colleagues, and hopefully the purchasing decisions of customers. Smart devices enable wider reporting and feedback, from real-time power consumption to space use and heat maps, and the advanced fault notifications across multiple sites, irrespective of geographic location. Due to the connected nature of IoT fittings, predefined scenes or routines can be updated and deployed quickly across multiple sites to reflect changes in space use, often without the need for on-site commissioning. Smart devices can also often be upgraded in a plug-and-play fashion to add additional functionality as and when is required or called upon. These are all proven areas, and our passion is to educate and onboard other retailers and to help them explore and realize their preferred technical solution. Moving on to modularity and interoperability. It's a simple idea. In the early days of the light bulb, manufacturers and fixture designers collaborated to create a limited number of lamp bases that benefited the entire supply chain, including the end user. Two global organizations are setting the standards for hardware and software interoperability, which provides a platform from which new modular sustainable fittings can be built. The Zaga Consortium, launched in 2010 with a mission to standardize the interface of LED components, covered such things as light engines, LED modules, LED arrays, and drivers and connections. And they developed and tested, creating certified specifications, in turn reducing unnecessary interface variants and promoting cross-industry collaboration. However, to address all electrical components and interfaces, Zaga have shifted focus towards interoperability, a step up over interchangeability. This requires all aspects of the fittings interface to be considered, be that mechanical and electrical components, including considerations for initial assembly through to end-of-life disassembly, covers in-service maintenance and upgrade requirements through to end-of-life, either upgrade, reuse, or remanufacture. The Zaga interface specifications are known as books. They each define the necessary considerations for certified interoperability. This certification reassures end clients and manufacturers alike of component compatibility and longevity of use. Hardware is, however, only one half of the modern smart luminaire. The DALI Alliance, also known as the Digital Illumination Interface Alliance, or DIIA for short, is a global industry organization working to standardize the DALI controls protocol. Established in a response to industry requests for an independently verified certification program, DALI 2 has significantly improved and developed confidence of DALI devices across industry manufacturers. D4I is an extension of the DALI 2 certification program. D4I drivers have a mandatory set of features related to power supply requirements and smart data capabilities. They store and communicate data about operational status, error messages, energy consumption, just as examples. Retail clients can benefit from this Zaga and D4I ecosystem of lighting products, enabling smart, future-proof LEDs with IoT connectivity that bring confidence in ability to adapt to future changes without incurring large estate costs to stay current or adapt to change in space use. They also provide a foundation for CIBSE TM66. TM66 is the result of an industry-wide collaboration and a desire to enable businesses to develop a circular, sustainable approach to lighting and wider engineering services. A full understanding of a scheme's sustainability must also include product lifecycle analysis of all energy and resource inputs and how to minimize the impact on the environment. A cradle-to-cradle approach. Maximizing resource efficiency designs out waste and pollution. It keeps products and materials in use. It addresses resource scarcity and regenerates natural systems. Within our industry, typical current practice follows a linear economy model. We extract resources from the earth and we use those resources to manufacture fittings, and at the end of life, or change in space use, those fittings are disposed, with only some low-value recycling of materials. This approach has two key problems. It assumes we have an infinite resource to extract from the earth, and it assumes we can discard waste and that the earth has an infinite regenerative power. However, in purely economic terms, it is the cheapest way to light a building. Moving to a circular economy requires a change to be made. This diagram shows a simplified industry approach to the circular economy, including make, maintain, return, and finally recycle phases. Here, fittings go back to the manufacturer either to be refurbished, upgraded, or remanufactured into more fittings at the end of life. This butterfly diagram by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation captures the wider principles of a circular economy, comprising both biological and technological cycles side by side. The left side of the diagram, biological cycle shown here in green, is here for completeness. However, from a lighting perspective, we need to focus on the technological cycles shown on the right in blue, which sets out 4 key areas. To fully implement TM66, it starts at the design and manufacture phase. You will start to see an increasing number of retail fittings designed for repeated disassembly, ensuring future upgrade compatibility, which will impact the size and aesthetics of fitting designs. Fittings will be manufactured with a higher percentage of recycled materials to reduce the use of virgin materials and single-use components. With time, we believe there will be an industry shift to source materials and components locally to reduce embodied carbon further where possible, and including the reuse of previously recovered materials and components. During the service life of fittings, the focus will move to maintenance. LED fittings require minimal maintenance compared to traditional lamp technologies, excluding emergency battery replacement. Assuming that the first components to fail will most likely be the capacitors within a driver, it gives a mean time between failure of circa 50,000 hours and a fitting service life of between 5 to 10 years, depending on operating hours. Retailers will benefit from fewer engineer visits and shop floor disruptions. Unexpected failures do occur, and fittings engineered for easy assembly and disassembly help to reduce the time required to perform any maintenance task on site. The use of quality branded components offers assurance. It helps extend service life, but comes at an increased cost. It also ensures component availability or succession to ensure future maintenances can be undertaken. Retailers will benefit from extended warranties to cover the performance of the products supplied. At the end of their service life, or when the space use has changed, it will move on to a refurbish phase. Rather than disposing of fittings, reverse logistic networks will be called for their recovery back to the manufacturer for upgrade or reuse of components. The final stage, recycling, will see fittings disassembled to hopefully recover some componentry before key materials are sorted and shredded for recycling. The circular economy is about keeping fittings at their highest value for the longest time possible. A quality fitting that continues to deliver the right performance over the long term would normally be favoured over a low quality one that's likely to fail. However, a durable LED fitting could have a life of many years, and there's every possibility that the space in which the fittings are installed could change, as could technology or lighting standards. In such cases, the modularity approach to fitting design will benefit from this ability to be updated to stay current. That concludes my section of the presentation, and I'll pass you back to John.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm going to simply summarise. In summary, we've seen some of the imperatives to action, both internal and external, legislative and social. Looked at some of the barriers to action and heard where help can be found, besides obviously happily contacting our good selves. We hope the Sainsbury's case study showed one way the challenge can be met and overcome, including some of the incredible results that they have been able to reap for their business. We concluded by looking at the fundamental changes to technology and recyclability and the essential shift in mindset and approach that this will require as we enter a new phase of luminaire specification and manufacturing. Well, that concludes our presentation. And although we had originally scheduled an hour, I'm mindful of everybody here's time. Our own expectation was to try and to finish a little earlier, perhaps after about 45 minutes, but we've overrun that too. So I suggest we take maybe one or two quick questions now, and if there are others afterwards and beyond that, then we will be perfectly happy to correspond directly back to those individuals. So any questions?
Let me just have a look, John. I'm just having a quick look, see if there's any questions. Okay, I think given the time, John, no questions are coming first through. I think we can call that a day. And thank everybody for your attendance to our presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Goodbye.